Hey there, everyone. It's Natalie. In today's episode, I'm chatting with Dr. David Lipman about bio-optimization and self-care tricks you can start using right now to feel your best. From grounding mats to cold therapy, we've got a lot to cover, so stick around. Hi, everyone. Today I am talking to an expert in bio-optimization. I know what you're thinking. What the heck, Natalie? Believe me, this is worth learning. Dr. Lipman will explain how our bodies are designed to heal themselves and the obstacles posed by modern life. Now, from the importance of grounding and cold therapy to actionable steps women can take to improve their health, Dr. Lipman offers invaluable insights today. He also shares his personal journey and the pivotal moments that steered him towards a holistic approach to health, which you all know I love. Whether you're curious about the effects of electromagnetic fields or maybe looking to optimize your well-being, this episode is packed with practical advice. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to have you as part of my podcast family. And for more information about these topics and to get a copy of my newsletter in your inbox each week, you can go to natalietisdale.com or check out the show notes today. Let's get started today with Dr. Lipman. David, Dr. Lipman, good to have you on. This topic stood out to me in what your expertise is, because I find so often our bodies are supposed to do something that they're not. So explain to us bio-optimization.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me, Natalie, first of all. And I'm happy to have these conversations because these are the conversations I have with patients every day. And the fact is that unfortunately, in the modern world that we live in, there are many things that are interrupting our normal processes. But fortunately, we're able to identify these things and then have ways to, remove these obstacles to our health or fortify deficiencies. So bio-optimization as a concept is to get the body fortified to do its best healing, its best regeneration, because nothing can heal the body like the body can. It's been made perfect in the way we were created. The systems are just like miracles of themselves of how we all work and function together. But as a practitioner, and I think too, as everyday people, we need to learn how to do self-care because unfortunately the healthcare system is not providing the means for us to really get the body optimized to function and feel great every day, because that's the way we're intended to be. That's the way we should feel. Now, I'm well into my 60s and I do feel great, but it's not, it is by design, but it's not without investment because of the modern world and how it, creates these obstacles to health. And again, where else are we going to turn? We can't get to the bottom of our own self, but unfortunately, the medical community doesn't seem to think and perceive the way that disease is in the body as something to go back and fortify the body rather than to try to treat the symptoms that you're experiencing. So that's where my bio-optimization is trying to empower an individual to take that self-control over their body and do the investment in self-care rather than the healthcare.
So I want to get in a minute to ways we can do this. I want to be sure people leave this podcast, if they're watching or listening, with things they can do immediately to feel better. But before I do that, why do we have to do so much? If our bodies are meant to heal themselves, is it the world we live in and the foods we're eating and things that are not working? I just feel like in my 50s now, it's so much harder to stay healthy. And I'm overall pretty healthy.
Yes. Well, again, great question, but I think you really answered it. Unfortunately, I remember when I was younger, we spent probably 90% of my time outdoors. And now we tend to spend probably more like 10% of our time outdoors. And the outdoors, the natural world that was created for us has so much in it to regenerate us, to help our own physiological processes to be enhanced in performance in terms of how all the processes that work in our body go. As an example, the earth has a natural low-level electromagnetic pulse. And that electromagnetic pulse actually helps to recharge our electromagnetic pulses because we, of course, are electromagnetic physical bodies, just like the earth is this biophysical entity. So are we. And all the physiology that happens, our nervous system, our muscular system, the way we bring nutrients into our cells, the way we remove waste products, the way our red blood cells carry oxygen has to do with plus and minus charges exchanging and how they interact. So without being in the natural world and being barefoot on the ground the way we should, because most of us now live on concrete slabs, we're, wearing rubber soles, and we're getting reducing that pulse from the earth to get into our bodies. Plus, the next part of the modern world is all this electricity around us, our wireless networks, our Bluetooth devices, 5G, are causing these high frequency electromagnetic fields that actually disrupt our normal functioning. So our cells can't communicate properly. We can't carry oxygen. And so the drop down effect of that is that our bodies aren't doing all those processes properly. It affects our immune system, our, growth hormone, our male and female hormones, our neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin are responsible to just make us feel good every day. And we have a great loss of that by simply not being exposed to the natural world. So there's so much of that natural world that, yes, it is working against us. But fortunately, there are ways that you can minimize and to regain the natural re-energizing of our cells, even at the electromagnetic level, as just an example.
Okay, so you've given me so much now. I want to follow up on. No, it's so good and so helpful because this is very real. There's a reason I think I like to walk barefoot. And as you're saying, if people are walking barefoot, it feels good to me. Didn't realize that was why. So, excuse me, before we go much more into all of those things, why is this so important to you? How did you land in this space? Yeah,
so that's a great question. So for me, there were several things that happened, in a very young age. The first thing that happened is I had my shoulder dislocated when I was 5. So that, automatically at a very young age gave me some kind of deficit that I was having to try to figure out. The second thing that happened that was probably even more profound was when I was 10 years old. I had just moved to a new neighborhood, and it was a bit of a challenging environment. And even the first day I, got there was, getting started up with kids in the street. Fortunately for me, there was a boy that lived next door. He was a couple of years older, and his father was into the martial arts, but even like Eastern philosophy. And he inspired me at 10 years old to, number one, get off of Captain Crunch and Wonder Bread and Pop-Tarts, and to start to eat food that would actually feed my body to be what was number two, to be strong. He taught me about exercise, and he encouraged me to start exercising right away, the first thing in the morning. And so at 10 years old, I started to work out with this boy next door, doing all kinds of calisthenics, and we had a heavy bag. We were punching and kicking. Because again, much of the motivation there was to just not be a victim in the environment. But it was also something inherently in me that told me, wow, there's something to do with being strong, how I eat, and exercising that's going to give me the ability to have power over, myself, my body, and the world around me. Mm-hmm. So that started me off just with that mindset. The second thing, or the third thing that happened, is when I was 15, I had a motorcycle injury. I actually broke my neck in 2 places. Mm-hmm. I didn't know it at the time because I was being groomed at a very young age to go into a family business. It was multi-generational, started by my great-grandfather. It was plumbing manufacturing. So my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father were in it, and I was being groomed. However, when I had that motorcycle injury, about 4 years later, I met this young chiropractic student at a summer job I had during college in a fitness center. And he got me to come into the clinic. I didn't even know what a chiropractor was. And he took x-rays. He said, you know what, you broke your neck in 2 places, back with that motorcycle accident. I didn't even know it because I didn't even tell anybody because I was afraid of, getting in trouble with my father. I wasn't supposed to be on a motorcycle, hanging out with the kids I was hanging out with, of course. So, but 4 years later, I was having a lot of pain and, inability to move properly. But I have to tell you, Natalie, that first adjustment was one of those moments that just transformed like my whole direction in life. It was like all of a sudden, this guy with, just these big hands just did this adjustment on my neck. And all of a sudden that pain that had been there for, 4 years was just gone. And it completely just gave me this fork in the road kind of feeling like this is something for you. And he was just this big guy. He looked like Clark Kent, he looked like he was going to pull that shirt open. It had a big S on it. And so he was very encouraging to me because he even asked me, he said, what do you think about being a chiropractor? And I didn't even know what a chiropractor was. So I just had this inner drive that this was my direction. I didn't know why. And the hardest thing was to tell my dad to think I want to go in another direction. But fortunately, he was very supportive, and it allowed me to just have the free range to follow this inner voice telling me, this is where you're supposed to go. This is what you're supposed to do. So that's what kind of pushed me in that direction. but also having those injuries. I mentioned the shoulder and then the neck being broken. It gave me the understanding that there's something I can do every day to fix these things. So having my own injuries really gave me some insight into how to manage them myself, as opposed to seeking out a physician that might need to do surgery. I mean, I had a broken neck. I had a dislocated shoulder when I was younger. So what I learned by learning more and more about the body, again, from that first inspiration of how the body can be strong and you can eat to support that, it gave me sort of the lifelong personal health journey of managing those things without surgery to strengthen them and get them strong so they wouldn't be, a deficit or something that impaired my life in any way. I have a very, manual labor, type job, picking people up and bending and twisting and carrying and doing all this maneuvering. And I have to be physically sound and strong and functional to do that. So despite the injuries I've had, I've learned how to get my body to be strong and fortified so I can still have a pain-free and functional lifestyle. And that's, again, how I try to impart that, because most people access me because they have some kind of deficit, there's pain, there's something. And a lot of people believe that, the herniated disc or the spinal stenosis or the torn labrum is the cause. It's usually not. It becomes an instability, but it's really the body's adaptation or compensation for those things that changes the way we bear weight and move. And it's those compensatory changes that become dysfunctional in many people. And so I try to explain to them how to optimize your musculoskeletal system to be pain-free and functional, and not let them wear their disc as a death sentence because they have a herniated disc. So many people think that that's like the end all, but it's absolutely not. There's so much you can do on a daily basis. But I also let them know, I say, look, you're the one that's walking around in that body every day. As your practitioner, there's only so much I can do. I can set you in the right direction, but you're the one that has to do it, because what you do to that body is going to have so much more of an effect than I can possibly do. So try to inspire people to invest in that, to make it part of their lifestyle, their daily habits. And that's essential if you really want to, when we're talking about musculoskeletal pain or any of the other things that biooptimization.
Well, the step number one, though, is having the knowledge. And that's why I love doing this, by being able to share this information with people. You told me just before we got started that 80% of your patients are women. And I want to ask you why you think that is. And then let's talk about some ways women in particular can help themselves without knowing their specific injuries or issues, things that from your standpoint, women can do right now to help themselves.
Yeah. So as I had answered before, my belief is that what I've observed is that women tend to be more proactive about health issues when they're feeling something or they're not feeling something right. They're more apt to try to seek out a remedy for that. Whereas men typically will kind of let things go. They kind of deny it. Sometimes I hear from women and say, oh, my husband should be here. He's got this, and this, but he's stubborn. So I've heard that over the years, many, many times. So it seems to me that that's it's a gender thing. But the cool part is, and maybe this is because women are also mothers and they have that instinct to be caretakers, whether it be for their own children, their husbands or themselves, they're more apt to be proactive and they want to find out. Unfortunately, in the modern healthcare system, many of the physicians that they end up going to are men, and I don't think they can relate to the kinds of differences that women have specifically. Again, when it comes to the health needs of women or men, understanding the differences in some of the physiological process, the different hormones and things is key. But kind of taking it back to biooptimization, a lot of the things that women suffer from, where, it's called hormonal issues, or even like things like depression, anxiety, insomnia, a lot of that comes down to the cells not getting what they need to be able to make the things our bodies need to make, like neurotransmitters and hormones and enzymes and amino acids and B vitamins, all the things our cells need to function normally. And the drop-down effect of that is to have an impairment in hormones, have an impairment in neurotransmitters. Giving somebody an antidepressant, which is supposed to basically ration the amount of serotonin their body has, instead of, if they're at a deficit, how about stimulating the body to make more instead of just trying to ration? And that's the medicine, the medical answer. And it's really doing, women or anybody a lot of harm, because if you just look at the intracellular nutrition and how an individual through genetic testing, which is very simple to do, manages nutrients and converts them and utilizes them at the cell to make all those things we need to make to function and feel great, that's the way that it should be approached. And that's what we do here. We try to give people the empowerment to say, hey, you have these genetic mutations that you inherited from one or both of your parents. But now that we know that, we can supplement around that in a way that it's not going to affect the way you're converting and making the things that you need. We also look inside the cell to see what are your actual deficiencies, because you could take a blood test and your bloodstream could be great and have all the amounts and levels that you need. But if you look inside the cell, it could be a whole different picture, and it's inside the cell where those nutrients are used. So all that information can empower an individual to be able to get a custom blend, give them what they need so they can make what they need to feel good again.
So where do you start with that then? For someone listening thinking, really need this, maybe they don't live where you are in Florida. What do you suggest? How can they help themselves? Sure.
So the lab that we work with, it happens to be about 5 minutes from my office driving, but they're national and they drop ship test kits where somebody can take it to their local lab, just get the blood drawn. It will send it here to be analyzed, and they get a very detailed report on those findings. What's called the methylation cycle is how we convert. And that only has to be done once, because the methylation issues one has, they're born with them, they're going to die with them. It's their genetics. But the micronutrient testing, looking inside the cell, that can change every 6 to 9 months. And it'll give you an insight as to really what you need supplement-wise. So those tests can actually be drop shipped to an individual, analyzed here, get the reports, and then go over the results to come up with a custom plan. It's actually very easy. We do it here all the time, but I've often done it with people out of state because of people that I've met or people that know somebody, or even people that have met me online and had looked at the website and see, oh, he offers this kind of testing. So it's a very simple but a very impactful process to be able to get those nutrients that you need, because if you don't have what you need to make stuff, you can't make stuff.
Start. Right.
Yeah.
Where can I give people a link in our show notes of where they can go?
Absolutely.
Okay,
It's
I'll
Physical Evidence Connect.com.
Okay.
Physical Evidence Connect will take you to a form fill. You put in your information and anything that you want to ask me or any questions you have, or if you want more information on micronutrient and methylation testing, that's or you can put it there. We'll get it, directly to us from that website, and we can reach out and have direct conversations. And what I like to do is share my reports with people. I share my methylation profile. I share my micronutrient tests to see when I first done it, how many deficiencies I had. I had 14 deficiencies, which just blew me away because, I was taking vitamins when I was a teenager. My friends used to make fun of me, call me Vitamin D. That was my nickname. I even got a custom license plate that said that at one time. But, the point is that when you can identify that, then supplementation becomes very, meaningful, because you just can't throw the same supplement at everybody. Some people can't even process a lot of these supplements. And if you take them and you can't process them, you actually build up toxicities.
Yeah.
Well, it's important to know. And, but, again, the cool part is this stuff is available for anybody to take advantage of.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, we're kind of inundated with ads and things that is, you should be taking more of this and more of this. And we just think, well, of course, that's good for everybody. And so I think it's a really important thing to recognize that we're all different. We have different needs and deficiencies, but we have to understand that first.
Yes.
And that's not something we hear often. What are other tips you would have for people that they can implement in their lives right now to help themselves feel better?
So one of the things that I've really come to understand about the body is the body reacts very well to what's called stress adaptation. It's how exercise works. It's how we force the body during exercise to do something it's not accustomed to. And then it has a physiological adaptation, which makes it stronger. It makes it, more efficient at doing those things. So whether it's strengthening your muscles, making your cardiovascular system more efficient, those are the things that are built into all of our physiology. And I personally have found for the last about 8 years now that cold therapy is a really good stimulator for my physiology. So whether you're using whole body cryotherapy, which is liquid nitrogen cooled air, or you have the cold plunge itself where you're, sitting in cold water, the response that we as mammals have built into our physiology has a slew of great outcomes in terms of stimulating immune system, stimulating growth hormone, hormone production, neurotransmitter production, even converting white fat to what's called brown fat. And brown fat is a much more desirable fat to have because it yields a lot of energy, and it helps us to rev up our metabolic rate, which warms us when we're in the cold, but it also is there to provide more extended energy. And again, doesn't run the risk of, creating visceral fat or even the subcutaneous fat, which is not desirable for us. And so cold plunge, cold therapy is a great, easy thing to include, whether you're putting ice cubes in your own bathtub or if you join a local place, because so many more places locally now have cold plunge and infrared saunas, which also have the heat option to be able to heat the body to get a lot of those same physiological responses. So that's something that people could very easily do and add to their everyday life. The most basic is get your shoes and socks off and get your feet on the ground outside. Do some deep breathing because oxygen is so essential to biooptimization. Getting oxygen into our tissues and our cells to make energy is essential. So, Wim Hof is very famous for that breathing technique, and just simply getting out with the sun on your face, on your body, doing deep breathing, Wim Hof style, and getting, grounded to the earth is going to give you so much of that renewal on a daily basis if you're able to just get out there and do that. So your physiological processes will get back, will be enhanced. If there's any deficits or, obstacles to that, those three processes can actually help tremendously. We have something here in the office called the Superhuman Protocol, and that harnesses pulse electromagnetic field or magnetism from the earth, exercise with oxygen therapy, which is breathing in 98% pure oxygen while exercising instead of the 20% that our atmosphere holds, and then getting into a very powerful red light bed that we have, which ultimately is driving optimal energy production and oxygenation of the cells to get that bio-optimized cell. It'll take you from about a 2 horsepower cell to a 34 horsepower cell. So that's the power of what magnetism, oxygen, and light can do for you, even if you're just doing it outside.
That's fascinating. Just that little bit and all those things we don't think about. You mentioned, and I want to go into one other topic, and then we'll have to talk again because I have a feeling there are a lot of different things we could talk about.
We could do deep dive on certain things.
I know we could, but let's, for just a moment, you talked about EMF and the world we live in. Can we do anything about that? I mean, here I am. I've got a computer next to me. I got my cell phone next to me. All these things, they're around me all the time. I work in media, so there's a lot of stuff going around in my house and in my work. What can we do, or can we not, to help ourselves in that regard?
So fortunately, since the environments that we live in, as you point out, are kind of harmful to us, many companies have identified things that are either wearable, things that you can actually block EMFs with necklaces, bracelets that will actually deflect a lot of those EMFs. They also have grounding mats, which will plug into, the outlet. And of course, all of our homes with electricity are grounded to the earth. They have to be. And so by plugging them in and having a grounding mat, you can be sitting on a grounding mat or grounding pad while you're at your computer. And that's going to be helping to drain those EMFs out of your body, even as you're being exposed to them in the moment. People have them for their beds. They sleep on them at night. So grounding mats and wearable PEMF, blockers are things that people can, get. And there's quite a few of them on the market, and they're actually pretty reasonably priced. And I actually have something called a tri-field where I can actually measure in a person what their EMF, concentration is, because some people seems to be more sensitive and that they hold on to more than others. So I've seen people that the number's supposed to be about 7 to 10. 7 is the natural pulse rate, magnetic pulse of the earth. I think it's 7.72. So anywhere from like 7 to 10 is what a normal reading on this tri-field should be. I've had people in their 200s because they're constantly in front of 3 monitors. They don't get outside. They're not grounding at all. And they're just more sensitive. But after 10 minutes in our PEMF, it goes right down to where it's supposed to be. So these things are highly effective because we're harnessing the power of the earth, in essence, to make that clearance process. So that would be something that people could do for home at a very low cost.
Is this the case also with, I've heard, people who drive electric cars, that there's batteries there that are disrupting this? Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. And, again, I've gone around to test things in the environment with this tri-field. I test some of the devices that we have here around the office. I made sure that all the computers we have now are very low EMS, because these are options you can get now, whether it's your iPhone, your iWatch. There are low EMF models coming out in the last couple of years because people are more aware of these things. And they're realizing the harmfulness. The old earpods that first came out, they were so high in EMFs. I can't imagine how many people, unfortunately, might have brain tumors because of that. But the newer ones coming out, they've been more mindful to make them low EMF. But yes, electric cars, any kind of battery, unless it's specifically created to have low electromagnetic fields, it's going to have high ones, and a constant exposure to that is definitely going to be detrimental. People that do drive a lot, even with regular gas cars, there's so much electrical, computers in the cars these days, compared to like 40, 50 years ago. And so I've measured, even in, dashboards and feeling a lot of those are reading very, very high. And, the longer you spend time in that car, you're going to be just as exposed as if you're sitting in front of a computer all day.
But grounding mats in that regard, I've heard, at least if you drive an electric car or Tesla, where the battery is, you can put a mat over it to block those. Is that something you've heard of too?
I haven't heard of that, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's something that was there, because if there's a problem, somebody's going to create that solution. And, maybe they could eventually make the batteries to be low EMF, but in the meantime, when they're high, you can get a grounding mat, just like a wearable thing that you're able to at least deflect much of that away. So it's not going to harm, the way your cells are communicating and trying to function optimally and normally.
Yeah, it's fascinating, that topic in particular, but I want to thank you for coming on and for all the information. I'll be sure to put links in the show notes for anyone who's interested in these things, and your website as well. And let's do it again soon. Let's come up with a couple of other deep dives, and we just want to help people feel better.
Absolutely. Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you so much.